Today, we're talking about NFL draft prospects that the national media just keeps getting wrong. Let's go. All Chiefed Up, the #1 independent Chiefs channel on YouTube. Today's live stream is sponsored by Prize Picks, so check them out in the description below. If you couldn't tell, Steve isn't with us today, but I'm joined by a very special guest, Arrowhead Addicts lead draft analyst and diehard Chiefs fan, Price Carter. What's up, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing really well. It's good to talk to you. You know, we've chatted in the DM some on Twitter, and recognize you guys been grinding on the tape and stuff as well too, putting some draft takes out there. So it's good to sync up and talk with you guys.
Yeah, man, this is the best time of the year, except for Super Bowl time, and you know, when we stuttered like we did last year, we're back to our old habits. But yeah, man, wanted to kind of jump in, talk a little bit about draft, touch base on your big board, who you like, who you don't like, and I really wanted to jump into draft prospects the media just seem to be getting wrong, whether they are overhyping guys or they're underhyping guys. And then also we'll just take some comments from the chat and we'll get going. So everybody, thanks for joining us. Hit that like button if you haven't already. Hit that sub button if you haven't. And we'll just jump right in. Price, who is a guy that you think the media is overhyping right now? If you had to say, give me the main one or your main couple.
Yeah, for me, this is a little bit trendy because the Chiefs did have this guy in on a 30 visit recently, and it's Arvell Reese, the linebacker out of Ohio State. And first off, I mean, he is an impressive individual, a physical specimen. The tools are just so exciting with him.
Yeah.
The question is where is this guy playing, and where is he doing it consistently? To project him as the #1 edge rusher in this class is just not something that I'd be willing to do. And quite frankly, if I'm a general manager of an NFL team, my #1 priority is perseverance and keeping my job. This is the type of guy that gets you fired. Now, he's also the type of guy that could save your job too. There is a lot there to unpack, but the tape of him lining up on the edge and beating tackles, not tight ends, tackles, is few and far in between. Most of his sack production came as a quarterback spy rather than, or a blitzer. Like he's got a great coffeehouse blitz that he gets a sack on in the Ohio State game, or the Texas game, the first game of the year, sacks Arch Manning. There's a lot to like there, but the #2 overall pick, just a lock top 5 guy, that's one that I can't get with, and I certainly do not like him for the Chiefs, not just because of everything I mentioned, but the fit there is like, would they use that type of body type at edge consistently? I mean, he's got the strength and the length. If he wants to set the edge, he certainly can, but there's a lot of development there. And quite frankly, I think that's one of the blind spots for the Chiefs. They've struggled to develop defensive linemen. You look at Felix Anudike-Uzomah, you look at some of the other guys that they've brought in, their projection path has not been great at the defensive line. So I don't love that fit. I think he'd be kind of a souped up Leo Chanel closer for the Chiefs than he would be a straight edge rusher. So he's one that I definitely cannot get there with.
Yeah, I see what you see with Arvell Reese. I'm a little scared by that one, to be honest. You mentioned the exact reasons. Leo Chanel, like we thought that was a guy that Spags could have got on the edge more, could have blitzed a lot more, could have rushed the passer a lot more, and they just couldn't find a way to do that with him. And so that scares me with Arvell Reese. That's also another guy, and I'm not knocking his traits or anything like this, but Sonny Styles, I see that same thing. Like, what are we going to do here? I feel like both of these guys are just glorified QB spies in a way, especially the way I feel like Spags would use them. So definitely for me, I like to rate my big board, and I'm not going to speak for you, but I'll let you answer this question too. A lot of people ask how we rate our big board here, and we've been doing this for years and years and years. I like to rate my big board in what I see on the film, and then I like to take into account what the Chiefs look for and how maybe Spags would use those guys. And so sometimes I will let how the Chiefs use players or a Chiefs mold or a Chiefs fit dictate what I do to break ties on my big board. So for me, with my edges per se, I've got Rueben Bain Jr. #1, and then I'm going to have probably, and this is wild, I guess I'm going to go ahead and keep Bailey, but I'm going to put Reese at 3 because it's just too hard to knock the traits. He is going to probably go top 10. But that's where you'll get like your TJ Parkers, your Keldrick Fox, people like that will be a little bit higher than maybe some big boards nationally, I guess, especially with Falk. So how do you rate your big board? Do you do that as well? Do you tend to fit them to the Chiefs, or do you just strictly go with what you see?
Yeah, so I actually kind of keep two. The Arrowhead Attic Big Board, which is available on the website, that's Chiefs specific, kind of like what you're talking about, where I tailor it towards the Chiefs' needs, the Chiefs' thresholds. Like we're going to downgrade interior offensive linemen, we're going to downgrade smaller edge rushers that aren't going to be able to stay on the edge against the run. Quarterbacks, obviously, we're going to downgrade, and then we're also going to lean towards the thresholds, right? Like Spencer Fondo at tackle, guy with a very short wingspan, very short arms. He's a guy that I don't think that the Chiefs would view as a tackle, and their draft history has showed us. So, and then I kind of keep mine separately. Like for instance, I really, really enjoy watching David Bailey's tape. He is someone like pass rush pornography is how I've described it. Like just the tools and everything that he has. I'm not sure that he's a guy that the Chiefs are going to be as high on. So like I have him lower on the Arrowhead Attic Big Board than I do my own. He's my second
Right.
overall player. But I totally understand that. And, that's one of the things that I really try to balance is what are the Chiefs going to do and what would I do? And here, I get the desire for people to get different types of players, whether it be a small bendy edge rusher who can win in under 3.5 seconds, or if it's a different style of wide receiver like a Jordan Tyson, who's not really a player that they've used consistent, that type of archetype of player consistently. You may really want that for the Chiefs, but like for me, if we're sitting here 15 days from now watching the NFL draft and they take that player, there's going to be a certain like pit in my stomach of like, oh no, did they just take a project? Is this a guy that we're going to be where is he? Why isn't he on the field? Why is this number 10 overall pick not playing? And so like that, the path of like, look, I know that people would grab their pitchforks and torches if Keldrick Folk was the pick at 9, but at least I could feel really good about like, this guy's going to find the field very quickly and play. And if you're someone who thinks that Steve Spagnuolo shouldn't have a job for that reason, I just can't get with that, because you look at the NFL as a whole right now. This is more about the edge rusher thing, but you look at the NFL as a whole right now. The NFL has never run the ball more effectively, and teams are rushing at a success rate that is the highest that they've seen in quite some time. And the NFL is playing 6 offensive linemen at the highest rate since like 2006 or something. Nate Tice put that up on Twitter. The opportunity to rush the passer is getting fewer and fewer far between whenever you can rush the passer and do not have to worry about the run. That mitigates guys like Nick Bonito, those type of guys. And like, I'll point this out. I know it's just 2 games. I know it's just the playoffs, but Nick Bonito was a no-show in the playoffs for the Broncos. You want to know why? The 2 teams that they played both really effectively run the ball. And that mitigates their impact versus a guy like John Franklin Myers or Zach Allen. Those were guys who had bigger impacts on those games because they can stay on the field for all 3 downs. So in reality, winning on 1st and 2nd down as an edge rusher, it's more important than it's been in a long time.
Right. Yeah. That's you touched on a lot of things there, and I think you're spot on. A lot of Chiefs fans are tired of the Spags prototype edge rusher that they pretty much just get effort sacks, and they're not really getting home a lot. George Karlaftis, a lot of people don't like the contract. Several things like that, and a lot of people do have a desire to go get that bendy, get there quick kind of guy like David Bailey or even Arvell Reese, if you've seen that on film, if that's something you've seen. But I don't think that people are understanding that Spags isn't going anywhere. And I don't think Spags is going to change what he does. The same way with keeping Andy this year. A lot of people said fire Andy, don't fire Andy, do this, do that. But there's going to be a lot of similarities this year to last year. I mean, I do see these guys changing and developing, but I do see that at the end of the day, they're going to go back to what they know and what they do. And I'm with you. I don't think you can fault Spags if he sees a guy such as a Keldrick Falk. I believe he's way too high at number 9. I would probably be very irritated by that. However, if he were to fall to say 20 to 23 to 24, I can see the Chiefs moving up with that second pick and going and getting him possibly at 29. So there's many different ways they could go about this. A lot of people think this is a big one. Let me ask you this one. The Chiefs at number 9, I think personally that if the Chiefs want Bain or Bailey, whichever one they decide to go with, because I think that's their top 2. I don't think Arvell Reese would be in their top 2. I think it's going to be one of those 2. And I'm with you. I think Bain is a much better fit for the fact that he is not a liability against a run. He's actually an asset versus the run on 1st and 2nd down. He's going to be able to stay on the field a lot more and be able to get a lot more pass rush reps, which is what Felix Anudike-Uzomah struggled with. I I tend to think it's Bane over Bailey, and I think they're going to have to trade up to get either one of them. Which one do you prefer? Which one do you think fits in the system better? And would you trade up to take either of them?
Yeah, I just want to shout out Scott here in the chat. I'm aware that the Chiefs have the ninth overall pick. I am writing 100 prospects and 100 articles on the Chiefs draft. I've been writing the draft prospects project since the Christmas tree was up. I go on the radio station here in Kansas City and Sports Radio 810 and 96.5 The Fan. I've been covering the Chiefs since 2020. I am aware that the Chiefs have the ninth overall pick. Thank you for enlightening me on that. And you can read about the 100 prospects that I'm writing and the 100 tape cut-ups that I'm doing on Twitter and the over 300 hours of tape film that I've put in on this project at arrowheadaddict.com. To answer your question, I think the tough thing here is putting things in scope of a certain class. When I hear people use the phrase like, this guy isn't the number 9 overall pick, this isn't the type of player that you would take at number 9. You just have to remember the context of this class. Rueben Bain is the highest level fit. He's the dream at 9 for me. If we're to put Rueben Bain in the context of a Will Anderson or some of these other top 10 pick edge rushers, Abdul Carter.
Yeah.
I don't think that he's in that range. He does have shortcomings. He does have flaws. But what I think makes Bain such an attractive pick is that he does bring us a first step in explosiveness and a bend that we've not seen from a lot of guys who can play like 90% of the snaps, which he does. He is on the field all the time. He can kick inside and win on the inside too. He can set the edge and has been a really quality run defender as well too. And this is a guy, the biggest knock has always been the arm length, but this is a guy that when you watch the tape, you don't see short arms. You don't see that from him. And his ability to win with power, again, we'll just come back to like winning with power. You're just not going to find any edge rushers in the NFL that aren't able to win with power. Even some of those smaller Benny guys like Burns or someone like that, they still use power. David Bailey and Rueben Bain are the only edge prospects in the last 5 years, draft prospects with 80 plus pressures, 35 or more run stops, and a 21% pass rush win rate via Pro Football Focus. So like these guys, they are on the field. They're consistently doing it. And yes, it did help that Bailey had Lee Hunter and Romello Height next to him. And yes, it did help that Messidor was there too. And Miami's got a pretty good nose tackle that'll probably come out next year too. But overall, I mean, Bain is definitely the dream. I think his ability, and let's be clear, like he's kind of an outlier in a couple of spots. He's not super tall. He's not the heaviest handed guy out there, but I just think what he does so well. I think the power for him is like obviously the primary tool. And something I just keep coming back to is like, again, saying, oh, we cannot draft this guy in the top 10. That's not a top 10 pick. You have to make the pick, right? Maybe you want the Chiefs to trade back. Maybe you want them to trade up. But this is one of those drafts that if the Chiefs had the number 1 overall pick, I'm not sure who I would want them to take. Because there's no clear consensus guy. Like in years past, like, right. Joe Alt, Marvin Harrison Jr., someone like that. It's not that clear cut this year. And you got to make the pick. So, if you want to take Bain at 9, that's what you take. And you just say, like, this is a guy that we feel really great about his floor. And I feel very good about his floor. And you got to keep in mind, the pass rusher, the opposite of George Karlaftis for the last 2 years has been pretty putrid. And the best this pass rush looked was when Charles Omenihu was healthy and like ready to go in that 2023 playoff run. We've not seen that type of guy opposite George Karlaftis. So if Bain can be an upgrade on that, it's pretty easy to upgrade. That's a huge start. And I really like the day 2 edge rushers as well too. So I would not be opposed to them doubling up at the position either.
Right. And you mentioned 2 guys there. This is the thing I'm noticing. A lot of people, here we are at, April the 8th. So we're a couple weeks from the draft, and a lot of people is very set on the guys they like, the guys they don't. And if you give them a player they agree with, they love it. And if you give them a player you hate, they're a bust automatically. I think it's hard to call people bust without anybody taking a snap in the NFL. I think that's just getting ahead of yourself. These guys can look good on film. Let's be completely honest. Alabama plays a lot of good teams throughout the year. Alabama, a lot of players pad stats versus the bad teams they play. There's a lot of that goes on in college football. So I don't think it's. I mean, you mentioned Joe Alt. He missed half of the season last year to injury, and a lot of people wanted to, Well, we got to watch this guy. There's a lot of injury concerns. Well, Joe Alt was a big time pick. Marvin Harrison Jr. Everybody thought he was can't miss. He's kind of been a bust so far, if you want to say that. Now he's not been in the best situation, but I think that's what dictates winners and losers in NFL draft after a few years. A lot of time, the cream rises to the top. That's for sure. But in most cases, it's scenarios in which you land with a good team that know how to use you and they understand how to fit you within their system enough to make you a star. And I think that's what you see the Chiefs do very well a lot of the times. And you'll get guys like Marvin Harrison Jr. Maybe if he goes somewhere else besides, playing with 3 foot tall Kyler Murray, he might be okay. Who knows? But I think people lose that back and forth a little bit. Another thing I kind of understand with Chiefs Kingdom is we're always picking at the end of the first round. Never fails. It seems like that's where we're at. And even last year before, it's break the bank, trade everything you got, get up in the top 10, go get Joe Alt. And then this year, we start to struggle. It's tank, get a top 10 pick. And now the popular thing is nobody's good enough, trade back. And it's like, it doesn't matter which way we are. They're wanting to do the complete opposite. And I feel like this draft is not deep enough to keep trading your assets back. I think you've got to pick your spots and your players, and you're probably going to trade up more than back because you're going to have to go get the guys you really like, because I think the class is not the deepest class I've ever seen. I think next year's class is going to be way deeper.
Yeah, and I think, a frequent refrain from people who, hear this thing is like, oh, well, you guys always say that about next year's class. I think like the big difference is like right now we can probably sit here and I can probably name like 7 or 8 guys, maybe even 10, who I think will like be lock home run top 10 picks for next year's draft. And that's not even including the quarterbacks, which powers the first round of the draft always. We've seen drafts like this, like the 2023 draft, the one with Nix and Penix and Caleb Williams. Like there was it was either 23 or 24, but there was just so much talent available. I think that this class really lacks those top end stars, and that's why having the 9th overall pick is tough, because there's just not that no brainer. If they want to trade down, I think one of the kind of frequent places is the Rams and the Cowboys that I think would be a spot back from 9, and then they could sit there and maybe take a Mekhi Lemon or a TJ Parker or someone that they like, or a Jermod McCoy maybe even. So that's definitely an option, and I think the best way to look at this is, like, again, going back to if I were a GM. So often with draft prospects, we use the P word, potential. We look at the tools, we look at the traits, we make our player comps. And I'm like, okay, I see shades of Micah Parsons with Myles Garrett. And it's like, well, let's measure this by the floor. What is this guy's 50th percent outcome? And again, going back to the Bain comparison, or if we want to take another prospect like Caleb Downs, I'm looking at a player at pick 9 that I want to feel is the most safe pick imaginable, because the Chiefs, they cannot miss here. Right? Where they are in the roster building, this is a rare opportunity for a team that should not be picking in the spot except due to injuries and some just stupid stuff that they did on and off the field. So if they're going to take a Caleb Downs, I'm going to have a hard time being upset about that, or a Mansour Delane. I know people might not love that because, safety, positional value. But I feel so good about, like, Caleb Downs is just going to be a good NFL player. Will he be an all-pro? Will he be the best safety in the NFL? Remains to be seen. There's reasons that if you want to detract from that, you could. But the likelihood that he comes in is just like, oh, he's benched, he sucks, he's not good. It's so little. So I think measuring prospects by their floor is probably the better way to do it, particularly for the Chiefs in this draft.
Yes, absolutely. Appreciate everybody being here. Get your questions, comments in the chat. I'm trying to look over. I'm trying to get to as many as I can. Hit that like button if you haven't. Hit that sub button if you haven't already. Trying to get to 55K. We're getting close. Appreciate everybody being here, spending your lunch hour with us. Price, the whole point of this was to talk a little bit about players that the media is getting wrong. You listed a guy. Who's a guy that you think that maybe the media is not big enough on? Like, who do you think needs more props out there in this 2026 draft class? A lot of people say players like D'Angelo Pons, players like that. Who do you got going?
Oh, who are some of my guys that I really love? I will probably go to probably my biggest outlier, and I have Lee Hunter as my number 1 interior defensive lineman. He's my number 11 prospect. I just have a hard time watching his tape.
That's high.
Yeah, I just have a hard time watching his tape and being like, oh, this guy's won't work in the NFL. And he's a very interesting prospect. Physically, you look at him, his build, like you don't see, like, you talk about a guy like Caden McDonald or Caleb Banks, like the way that they're built, they look like they're built in a lab. Lee Hunter is not that. Like
Right.
I'm writing my Price's Pick article, which is like my 10 favorite players in the draft. And like, I just said, like, this guy's just country strong. His ability to like anchor and just like embarrass really quality tackles, or not tackles, interior offensive linemen in big playoff games. Like, he almost single-handedly wrecked Oregon and Emmanuel Pregnon in that playoff game in the first half. Not David Bailey, not Romello Height, Lee Hunter. And this is a guy that from the nose tackle position has actually been able to do quite a bit as a pass rusher. The only interior defensive lineman with a better pass rush win rate or pressures are Grayson Holton as far as total pressures, and pass rush run rate Christian Miller. Well, both of those guys are, fringe first round guys. Holton's probably like a second rounder, but there's a guy who's also really strong against the run. And I also just like love the player too. Like, it sounds like his combine interviews were awesome. He's a guy who grew up in Mobile and like lifelong goal to play in the Senior Bowl. The Senior Bowl made an awesome video of him accepting his invite to play in the Senior Bowl. I just came away so impressed from his tape and love the player, love the fit. And I just have a hard time betting against that guy's traits.
Yeah, I like him too. I've got him maybe higher than most, I would say. Well, I won't say that. I don't know if I've got him higher than most. I think right now he's going to be right at the number 5 position for me. But I can see how you could get him above Caleb Banks with the injury. Maybe if you want a guy that's a little bit more of a disruptor, maybe over Caden McDonald. But I think that there's going to be how many defensive tackles do you think is going to go in the first round this year, if you had to guess? Do you think it's going to be one of those years where there's only 1 or 2, or do you think there's going to be maybe 3 to 4 sneak in? Because I'm thinking maybe 2 sneak into the first round max.
Yeah, that would probably be the number. Like, if I'm setting the over under, it's probably 1.5, or maybe flat out 2.
Do you care to name which 2 you think could go into the first round?
First off, speak to Caleb Banks. I'm going to be lower on him than most. Between like the tape itself, which, let's be clear, he's a rush the passer and stop the run, maybe on the way to the passer type of guy, even when healthy. 2025 was a really rough year from him with the foot injury. He comes back because the family's getting involved, tell him, hey, you need to get back on the field. Your draft stock's falling too low. Goes to the Senior Bowl. Everyone's talking about him day 1. He's talking all this shit to everyone. And then day 2 and day 3 of the Senior Bowl practices, he's on the ground a lot, but still talking the trash, which just hits a little bit different. Has another foot injury for a guy who's 330 pounds. And there's the Chris Jones comps, they go beyond just the size, right? Like, there are some want to issues with him. Like, how, are we getting your best every single snap? Right. So I'm going to be lower on Banks. I mean, pick 40 would be interesting, but frankly, again, like, the risk there is maybe not one that I want to take. The 2 guys that I do think that you could, Caden McDonald, Lee Hunter, I'd put them in that bucket as like, back into the first, like kind of like a Kenneth Grant type of thing. Or are we just going to take this guy that we feel like has a really high floor? And then I think the name that's really been rising up is Christian Miller. And I think you look at what he was asked to do in that defense, like, he's solid against the run, but has shown more pass rush upside. We talked about the pass rush win rate. And then Georgia used him quite a bit on stunts and games where he's twisting inside, he's looping around. He's got some more lateral agility than some of the other guys. So those would be the 2. I think Peter Woods obviously is the other one. So like, I just gave 4 names there, but again, Peter Woods had a really rough process, and he's a guy who the 25 tape's not great, shows up at the combine at 298 pounds, measures only, doesn't test. Then he shows up a little bit heavier at the pro day, not able to complete the pro day due to a hamstring, only able to run a 10-yard split before the hammy gives out. He's another guy that, like, the process has just been rough, and at one time was considered a top 10, top 15 pick, and has fallen down boards. I definitely think that teams will take a chance on him, but we just talked about all these guys, and all of them have their warts, right? Like Christian Miller, not a ton of production. Lee Hunter, again, not a ton of production sack wise. The pressures are great, and like the testing for him is pretty subpar. Like, he's a guy, like, his vert was like 11 inches or something ridiculous, like slide a note card under him. But does that matter? Right. So it's a position that I definitely think the Chiefs need to address. This is not a great defensive tackle class. It's a good nose tackle class. You talk about your Dominic Oranges, your Dante Corleones, and that's another guy who's had a really rough process. But as far as just penetrating 3 techs, there's not a lot of them.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think if I had to guess who, I think there may be two. Um, for me, I think Caden McDonald's going to be a first round pick. I really do. I see somebody taking him at the end of the first round, and I feel like the other one could either be Christian Miller or Peter Woods. That's the two. I think Caleb Banks has firmly slid out of the first round with that injury. I feel he's like a player that if you take him at the end of the first round, he just don't pan out. Like that's like a job kind of, hey, what were you looking at there? And like you said, effort, just things like that. I can see Caleb Banks maybe falling to the 40 mark. I actually think Lee Hunter might be sliding a little bit. It is weird to think that because he did dominate the Senior Bowl. I don't like some of his build. I think he's a little like to me, he looks a little top heavy sometimes. I don't know how that translates in the NFL, but he is a game wrecker. He gives you a little bit more of that pass rush that you're looking for, something that he can disrupt a little bit, the Grayson Halton kind of vibe right there with him. So I don't know which one it's going to be. If I had to guess, I would say Peter Woods, McDonald are the ones that get into the first round. Maybe Christian Miller could be that third one. That's who I would think. A lot of people always want us to talk about the defensive tackles because we get stuck on defensive end so much with the Bailey, the Reuben Bain, Zion Young. Go ahead and give me one more defensive end, though, before we move on here. One more defensive end, and we'll move on to the offensive side of the ball a little bit. Give me one more defensive end that maybe people are a little too low on that you think could be a little higher. For me, it's Gabe Akis. I've got him as a top 30, 35 player easily. I like Gabe Akis at 6'3", 260. I think he does a lot of what he needs to do, and he's a very focused football player. He's a very smart football player. I'm just never going to move him out of that top 30, 35. It's just not going to happen. So who's a guy like for you that you could see maybe getting drafted a little early or just somebody you're bigger on with the defensive end position?
Well, you definitely took one of mine there with Akis, and I totally agree. He's actually another one of my Price's picks, one of my guys, state champion, two-time state champion wrestler. And you look at what he was asked to do at the Illinois defense. Like he had offers from other schools, decides to stick around on a defense that's turned out consistent NFL talent recently. And at times they'll line up in a 3-man front and ask him to be a stand-up edge rusher and set the edge, which he does.
Yes.
And then he can put his hand in the dirt and rush more from like shaded inside the tackle, the strength, the agility, turn in a great testing numbers. Like I really like Gabe Akis. He's another guy that like there's that back end of the first is always those guys that are a little bit of surprise. He's not one that's going to surprise me at all. Let's see. So Derek Moore and Danny Dennis Sutton from Penn State. Those are two names. Derek Moore is another one of those guys that he's got power. Like he had that viral rep of putting Markel Bell, who's like double his size, on the ground. He's a guy who has great closing speed, has pretty good production. I would say he's adequate run defending. Like if we're talking about his ability to hold up at the edge, it's probably closer to like what FAU was coming out of school, which by the way, like FAU wasn't dinged for that coming out. It just wasn't a strength because of the way Kansas State played, where he was playing up a lot of times shaded between the guard and the tackle or head up on the guard. Danny Dennis Sutton from Penn State, he's another guy that I wrote up for the site. He's got really great power, great size. Like he has all those kind of Spags thresholds to his game. And he's a guy that I think will fall into that maybe pick 40, pick 50 range. I see a lot of buzz in the chat for Zion Young. We are not the only ones. Like people are going to love Zion Young's traits. They're going to love like what type of energy he gives as a player. Like he is a guy that is a vocal leader of the team, and he has some just real, like he's the most like FU guy in this guy. Like he in this draft, the way he plays, he just plays with a violence and a physicality, and his ability to hold up against the run. It's exciting. Now I will say with Zion Young, several of his sacks came unblocked, where like he just had a in lane to the quarterback, but hey, he got the guy down. How many times do you see guys don't do that? I think that I think there's a real good chance that Zion Young isn't on the board for pick 29, let alone 40. So Akis and Danny Dennis Sutton are both some names, and I'll also throw Malachi Lawrence in there from UCF. He has one of the coolest sequences in the game against Baylor. So it's raining. He comes up, gets a strip sack on the quarterback, and UCF recovers it. Oh, flag, defensive holding. So that play is mitigated. He comes right back and does it again and gets an interception. This time he hits the quarterback. The quarterback throws an interception to a defensive lineman, all because of him. Those are back-to-back reps where he's like, oh, I'll just do it again. There's a little bit more edge setting concerns for him. He's a little bit smaller than some of the guys, but I mean, I think I don't have everyone's measurements in front of me, but he's not so slight that he's just not going to be able to defend the run, a la like a Cassius Howell or an R. Mason Thomas. But the run defense isn't as much of a benefit for him. But Malachi Lawrence from UCF is another guy that I find myself constantly coming back to in that day 2 bucket.
Right. Well, he's 6'4", 253. I mean, he's right on the. I want to say Ashton was 260-ish when they drafted him last year.
So, and that's something too that the Chiefs they have been kind of quietly, slowly pulling back their thresholds on that, because Ashton Gelati is a bit of an outlier in a couple places, especially in arm length. He does not have particularly long arms, but kind of going back to that Gabe Ackus bin of players, like he plays way bigger than his size, and Gelati was the same way at Louisville.
Right.
He played with a certain FU energy, and it really translates to him being able to stay on the field for early downs.
Right. You mentioned Danny Dennis Sutton. I think he's like a Spags, he's like a Spags wet dream, if I could say so myself. Like, this dude is just built insane. He's got like almost 34-inch with an 83-inch wingspan. It's insane. Like, he's just built like a Greek god for how Spags would build a defensive end, I think. But then you've also named guys like Malachi Lawrence and even Zion Young. It wouldn't surprise me if Malachi Lawrence don't sneak into the back end of the first, maybe in the top 40 for sure. I think this could be, to me, the defensive end class is very intriguing here. I feel like it's very top weighted with like maybe the top 10 or 11, depending on who you can get up for. With the Chiefs, I don't feel like a lot of these guys fit us. Like, I just don't feel like Cassius Howell or R. Mason Thomas or, just guys like that. We mentioned Arvell Reese earlier, maybe even David Bailey's borderline there. There's a lot of guys that I don't fit, that I think do not fit Spags' mold too well. But like we said, we have been moving and transitioning that direction. But it's like, do you want to give him a chance to play like Ashton Gelati, who was closer to 260? Or do you want to take, a guy closer to BJ Thompson, who is around like 235, 240, that just never could see the field? And then, of course, he had the medicals, and now he's not even with us. So it's just, it's different. It's weird. I don't really know which way they're going to go. Spags is going to be the ultimate, determination there. But everybody, be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'm going to take a quick break, show our sponsor, Prize Picks, and we'll be right back to talk the offense. Chiefs Kingdom, we have officially partnered with Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. Prize Picks is a daily fantasy sports platform. It's distinctly separate from a traditional sports book, and it's the absolute best way to add some extra heat to every single game. The app is incredibly easy to use. You aren't playing against sharks. You're just picking more or less on an individual player projection. Think Kenneth Walker's total rushing yards per game, more or less. Travis Kelce's total touchdowns in 2026, only 4, more or less. You just pick at least 2 players, lock in your lineup, and you're in the action. Prize Picks is available in most states, including California, Texas, Florida, and right here in the heart of America, Missouri and Kansas. One thing we love is the new public feed. You can actually find and follow us directly on the app at All Chiefed Up. You'll be able to see our live lineups and tell our picks before we even post them here on the channel or our other social media platforms. So if you haven't joined yet, just download the app and use code HMA when you sign up. When you play your first $5 lineup, you're going to get $50 in lineups instantly. Click the link in the description, use code HMA, and remember to always play responsibly. Now back to the show. Shout out Prize Picks for being the sponsor of today's show. They're teaming up with us all the way through the draft, and they're going to be our official sponsor throughout the season this year in 2026. So shout out Prize Picks. Download that. The description's in the app. The link's in the app. Use code HMA. Get yourself some good stuff there. Price, we talked a lot about defense. I'd like to move it to offense for just a little bit. And we'll discuss a few players that maybe the media, again, a little too high, a little too low on. Let's go to wide receiver first. I think that is a position that a lot of Chiefs fans, there's a lot of vocal people on X. If you don't get Carnell Tate, it's a disaster. You got to get Carnell Tate. If you don't get Lemon, it's a disaster. There's a few, there's battles, do you get your defensive end early? Do you get your wide receiver early? That's a big thing. If the Chiefs go wide receiver at 9, who do you think, if all guys are on the board with Tate, Lemon, Cooper, Tyson, whoever you like there, who would be your preference at number 9? And then also give me a guy that you think is not getting enough love, not necessarily for the first round, but just a guy that you really like in the wide receiver class here.
Yeah, so I pick 9 is tough. I do have to agree that I think Carnell Tate is probably like the best pick 9. And the reason why I say that is like he is the cleanest eval. You go, you look at the
Yeah.
tape, what he can do as a blocker, what he does well. It's just a natural separator, really strong at the catch point. And also, he's a body type that is very similar to Tyquan Thornton. Tyquan Thornton came out, he was lighter out of Baylor. But I think now he's probably closer to that like upper 180, 190, like he's talked about putting on weight. That's right where Carnell Tate is. And he does a lot of those things except better at the catch point than Thornton. So I think like that's the guy that you would take at pick 9. And then like look, you hate to do this, but like if there's a profile you're willing to bet on, it's an Ohio State wide receiver and their reputation in the league and what they've done. To me, something that I am coming back to more and more, and it's not just because Tyreek Hill is posting videos of him working out in Kansas City every day and pictures of him hugging Andy Reid. It is that I think the Chiefs could wait on wide receiver. I will not be surprised if the Chiefs don't spend a pick on wide receiver until day 3. And it goes like this. It goes with obviously Rashee Rice. He's not being suspended for anything he's done yet. No
Right.
pending suspensions for him. Now there's a lot of time left before September, but we've not seen a healthy 17-game season from Rashee Rice since his rookie year. He was pacing for well over 1,000 yards in the 8 games he did appear for last year. Then you go to Xavier Worthy, same thing, where like wasn't healthy last year. We're going to get a fully healthy season of him. Better coaching from Chad O'Shea. They clearly believe in Tyquan Thornton, the player, and want to include him in the offense more. It's kind of frustrating because they're the guys who took him off the field once Hollywood Brown came back and once Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice came back. Getting him more consistently in the offense. You look at an 11 personnel of Tyquan Thornton, Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce, and Kenneth Walker, and Xavier Worthy. I mean, that's an improvement over where they left the last season and what they had going into free agency. And that's not even factoring in that Jalen Royals right now is someone that they took in the 4th round that has a skill set that a lot of people liked, and compared to Rashee Rice, he's a total unknown right now. And again, going back to that better coaching, I think that they're going to be willing to bet on that. I also think another reason why they would be willing to bet on that is because wide receiver classes, they consistently turn out good players in round 2, round 3, and even beyond, right? And the other thing about the wide receiver position is there's all different sorts of types, right? You want a yak guy, a guy who can get the ball in his hands and do stuff. Well, Makai Lemon is the name brand. You want to go like discount brand of that type of player, you can go look at a guy like Antonio Williams from Clemson, or you go look at a guy like Skylar Bell from UConn. Like those are guys who all kind of have a similar skill set that can do things for you, and you can get them on down the board. So I will not be surprised if the Chiefs wait. I do really like Makai Lemon. I think he's the highest level fit. Plays much bigger than his size. And by the way, the size isn't so diminutive that it's going to limit him. Plays strong at the catch point, blocks, a good route runner, the acceleration. Like he's a guy that I would love to get a slight trade back and take at like 12. I do think that like I don't see just consensus him being a top 10 pick. He's another one. As for like names on down the board that I really like, I'm really high on Bryce Lance from North Dakota State. Insane production over the last couple of years. He is so explosive. He is so good down the field. He is someone that, like, again, kind of falls in that bucket of like, we can use this guy in the vertical field, but also I think his agility horizontally is something that like he did get the ball in jet sweeps. He had 21 touchdowns 2 years ago.
Yeah.
At North Dakota State, obviously NFL bloodlines with his brother being drafted by the San Francisco 49ers, and also put Ted Hurst in there. Like this is kind of another one of those buckets. The name brand, Carnell Tate, Kirkland brand, Ted Hurst, Sam's Choice, Dejon Stribling out of Ole Miss. Like there's these big field.
Love Stribling. I love
Yeah,
that
so,
guy.
like and that reaction that you're having there, that's why I think that the Chiefs might wait on wide receivers, because
Right.
there are those guys. Even like you want a shifty slot. We talked about Antonio Williams. You could go to Deion Burks, a guy who like his production hasn't quite matched like the physical profile for him, but when he's been on the field, he's been productive, been a good punt returner. Like there's just all these guys on down the board that I think could really, and that's not even talking about Skylar Bell, who we mentioned, who was like a Blitnikoff finalist and at UConn. There's just a lot of guys that can fit a lot of different ways, and I know that there is always this desire, rightfully so, to have Patrick Mahomes enriched with weapons this whole time here. But at the same time, if the Chiefs take Carnell Tate at 9, how sure are we that he's going to play 40 to 50% of the snaps?
Dude, that's what I try to tell Chiefs Kingdom a lot. The wide receiver has become almost the same as the whole let's get the speed rusher. They're wanting the big, tall Carnell Tate, the big X kind of guy, and the Chiefs just don't tend to utilize those. And another thing, you mentioned this too, and I thought this was spot on. I've been saying this for weeks. Tyquan Thornton kind of is that Carnell Tate kind of guy, and
Yeah, with
he
Tate, it's weird
produced.
because people put that big body X label on him, but his play type and his style really isn't that.
Yeah,
Like, I think the type of player that people are imagining is a little bit more of a Denzel Boston or Malachi Fields, where it's like this guy is not going to win with separation. He's going to win at the catch point and can be a true X, right? Whereas like Hurst or Tate or like we talked about with Thornton, like those guys can do those things, but they're more prevalent in the vertical field and can win with speed. So I think even that comparison like doesn't make sense because I think like I think about the difference between George Pickens and DeAndre Hopkins, right? Like George Pickens, he is a big bodied X receiver, but he wins in the vertical plane because he's so good at the catch point, because he can separate and he's good after the catch. That was never like really DeAndre Hopkins' thing. DeAndre Hopkins was a route technician that had incredible hands
yes.
and could just box you out. He was much closer to that basketball player playing wide receiver.
Yeah, he kind of gave you the vibe of like Antonio Gates at tight end, like you just
Yes.
box out and you do whatever. Yeah, that's kind of the way it is though. But Tyquan Thornton, people wanted him re-signed back, and Brett Veach delivered that. And so now it's like, well, I don't know if you waste the number 9 pick on Colonel. And I'm not saying that's a waste, and I'm not even saying they're the same type of player. That could almost be the whole, great value Sam's choice like comparison you said earlier. But if you had, let's run through this very, very quickly. I'm going to give you the pick. So 9, 29, 40, 74. If you had to pick a wide receiver at each of those spots, who would be your preferred wide receiver at number 9? Would you say Carnell Tate?
Yep, it would probably be Carnell Tate.
Is it because he's the cleanest eval to watch, or is it because you think he's the best fit? Because I think we both think Lemon, especially
Yeah.
if you're not going to put Rashee Rice here long term.
Yeah, I definitely agree that I think Lemon is the better fit, and I think would be a very natural Rashee Rice replacement. I'm just not sure that you would have to take Lemon at 9, but then again, you have to make the pick. And if you're
Yeah,
not,
you got to make it.
if people aren't wanting to trade down, then maybe just take your pick and take your guy. Pick 29. This is the hard spot for me. I saw someone in the chat mention Omar Cooper Jr. The
Right. I just don't know if he gets to 29 anymore.
Yeah, and I will say this: like he's gotten this yak reputation, and that he was very, he was moved to the slot this year for Indiana. Like when I watch him yak, I would definitely say like, hey, this is one of his better skill sets. But I don't watch this guy and be like, this guy is incredible after the catch. Like he's not the quote unquote running back with the ball in his hands. Makai Lemon is better after the catch, in my opinion. Now, Makai Lemon is just a little bit smaller, but not much. Like Cooper is just like 6 foot 200. Like he's not this big hulking guy. So pick 40. That one interests me. I'll go with 2 guys here. You want to talk about a guy who has an exciting body type that plays a lot like Rashee Rice. It's Chris Bell, the wide receiver out of Louisville. Tore his ACL late in the year. His usage is the most similar to Rashee Rice in the Chiefs offense today. Crossing routes, slants, RPOs. He has some really, really great reps where he is just like, he had a huge touchdown. I believe it was against Miami or Notre Dame. He just takes a slant to the house. 6'2", 220 pounds. He's built like AJ Brown. Like he kind of has that look to him. And I comped him to DK Metcalf because like I think he's all right at the catch point, not great. Which again is kind of DK where it's like you're built like this big vertical X, but you're kind of more of a yak guy than you are that. So, and Jeremy Bernard would be another guy like not flashy. I think his role would be more Hollywood Brown. Just does a lot of stuff well. A good blocker, a guy who gets open, can live over the middle of the field, is good in and out of his breaks, all right at the catch point, not many drops, just like a very useful guy. In the 3rd round, like that's where I would start thinking about like Bryce Lance. I would think about Ted Hurst in that area. I would think about Skylar Bell in that area. Those are all names that come to mind for me in that area. Very different profiles with those guys. I'll even throw a name out here. I'm just going to bring him up on every show I go on because I think he's really the Chiefs type. And I think he's going to be sitting on the board for a long time. And it's Eric McAllister out of TCU. This is another guy, probably one of the better yards after catch wide receivers in the class, has a lot of production, very, very good year at TCU. And he's not just a TCU wide receiver. He transferred into TCU. So it's not just helmet scouting the Horned Frog. We're like, okay, another crappy TCU wide receiver. Why is he going to be on the board late? He was charged with a stalking and threatening incident with a gun. It was a weapons charge that he pled guilty to, violated his parole due to some THC issues, which I don't even know, what the state is that, if that's still a thing now with the legalization of that. And also got injured at his pro day, discovered a hairline fracture in his foot. So he's going to be sitting on the board for a long time. His skill set, when healthy, matches a lot of what the Chiefs like. We know that the Chiefs have taken day 3 gambles on players with character concerns before, and he's a guy that I think, like, if there's a guy who's taken round 5, round 6 that just ends up being a productive NFL receiver, it's Eric McAllister.
Yeah, McAllister does have those off the field problems. I think it's all in Texas, so whoever gets him is going to have to get his parole officer to be able to get him out of the
Yeah,
state
yeah.
of
The
Texas.
taking a wide receiver from Texas with off the field concerns. That just feels like a given.
I don't know about you, Price, but I'm kind of over all the off field things. I'm just kind of done with it.
It is exhausting, and
It is.
And Matt Verderham here at Arrowhead Addict, he has said this before. Like, he has sources in the building, and they have just point blankly told him, we want to win, and we will do what it takes to win. And that is a very stone cold way of looking at it.
That's
a luxury that
sell your soul kind of vibe.
It is a luxury that is provided to them for being, the modern NFL dynasty, that they can say that and get away with it. But yeah, it's exhausting when you look at things like, it's not just the crash incident with Rashee Rice. It's the other allegations that come against him that he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt because of the other things that he's done.
Right.
And we forget that Xavier Worthy had a weekend there where, like, the Chargers were ultimately dropped, but there was some moments there. And for every one of those, there's been plenty of other scares. And it's something that just comes with Andy Reid. He very clearly has, for lack of a better term, a savior complex, I can fix them type of thing. And that is paid off in suits. You could argue other than Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill has been the best draft pick this team has ever made, from where they picked him to the value they got out of him to then the value that they flipped and then flipped again for this Trent McDuffie trade. Tyreek Hill might be one of the best draft picks ever as far as where he was taken and the value he brought back. That being said, John Dorsey had to go to the mic on Sunday afternoon after the draft to address drafting Tyreek Hill because there were so many red flags. So
Right.
That's the world that they're going to live in. They're going to live by the sword, and they're going to die by the sword.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of wide receivers there that I excuse me, that I really like. I'm pretty big on Omar Cooper. I've been big on Omar Cooper since probably January, before he was getting a lot of buzz. Steve, he hadn't even watched him, and I was like, dude, you've got to go watch Omar Cooper. I think he's pretty solid. I do think he's getting, I think the hype level is getting really high on Cooper, to the point where now he could be a little overhyped. I'm seeing people saying that he could be the number 1 receiver out of the class. He could be top 15. That's why I said I don't know if he'll be there at 29. I wouldn't be opposed if the Chiefs were at 29 and they moved up a few spots to take him. I think I'd be fine there. For me, the best route runner is Jordan Tyson. If you didn't have his injury history, but you can't really say that, because if you said that about anybody, everybody could be good. So the whole Jordan Tyson, for me, if I'm going to go a little bit later, you mentioned Jeremy Bernard. Jeremy Bernard at 40 would be a steal, in my opinion. I honestly see a lot of, I think one of my floor comps for him was kind of like a mix between Rashee Rice meets Juju, because of the way he can block and do that dirty work. Everything he does, he's not exceptional in anything, but the way they used him in Alabama, he was even at Washington and done, decently there. And I believe that he's just a guy that you can get use out of him. He can carry the ball out of the backfield. He does a lot of what they will ask Rashee Rice to do. You mentioned Chris Bell. He played right up the road from where I live. Chris Bell's a beast. A little scared over the knee injury a little bit, but I don't know. You could get a nice injury discount out of him. I really like Antonio Williams. I think that people are sleeping on Antonio Williams. A lot of people saying he could be a slot only. I don't know if I believe that. At 190, 5'11", we were using Xavier Worthy out on the boundary. Was it successful? that remains to be determined. But I do believe Antonio Williams can move around a little bit. I don't think he has to be pigeonholed to the slot. And I do think he offers a lot of good route running. I think besides Jordan Tyson, he could be right up there in the top 3 or 4 best route runners in this class for me, from what I've seen. And then, of course, I do like Dejon Stribling as well.
With Williams, I think, the term that I've been trying to put in my Rolodex more is slot best versus slot only. Because as you said, 165-pound Xavier Worthy takes most of his reps on the outside.
Right.
The way that I always try to look at the slot, and by the way, like, you can line up in a formation where you protect players from, give player free releases from other methods than just the slot, whether it's a bunch or a stack or something like that. Motion as well too. And I think we're seeing this kind of whole new world where, like, Jackson Smith-Njigba, the guy who just got, the whole world given to him, and won Offensive Player of the Year, he was a guy who came out with that slot only moniker. And it's just kind of a tired way of looking at it. At the end of the day, can you win consistently against defensive backs? I mean, that's what it's got to be. Now, obviously, JSN, he's put in the work to where he's just unguardable in man and so good after the catch and good at the catch point. With Antonio Williams, kind of going back to him, like, he's another guy that, again, I think probably leans towards slot best, but this guy is tough over the middle of the field. He takes some hits and he still gets up from them and is not afraid at the catch point. I think the only thing that took me aback from him, from like being that guy that I'm just like, okay, round 2, he's just not that explosive down the field, right? Like, okay, you're smaller, you live over the middle of the field. I'm expecting explosive plays. There's not a ton of explosive plays for him. And there's some times of him getting caught from behind, missed some time this season due to injury as well too. And then, you just kind of come back to the whole, like, okay, how many slot guys are we going to have, Chiefs? Right now they kind of have 2 to 3. If you want to look at Kelsey in that way, obviously Rashee Rice is a slot best, same with Xavier Worthy. And, we don't really know what Jalen Wills is. And Tyquan Thornton's going to line up on the outside. So, again, going back to that, like, Dejon Stribling, where it's like, okay, Pure X, there's a guy who, can be what Marquez Valdes-Scantling was. Hopefully a little bit better there at the catch point stuff. But there's the role there. So I think part of it is we're taking the traits, how we're going to plug them into the offense, and then what does that look like for 2026?
Right, for sure. Before we get out of here, Price, I want to ask you a question. Give me, say, 2 to 3 quick, to the point. Give me some takes that Price Carter thinks about this draft. I'll give you an example. For me, I think a wild take for me, a hot take, I think Eli Stowers could potentially be an end of the first round pick. That's wild, but I have this weird gut feeling that somebody's going to do something wild, and they're going to see so much potential as him as not only a tight end but a receiver. And I think that with his testing, I've just got this weird feeling. So give me a couple things like that, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, don't be surprised if Jordan Tyson is closer to being picked with the Chiefs' 29th pick than he is the 9th. And I just think that there's a lot of stuff there with the injuries, and I'm not sure that he's as a high-level fit as everyone thinks for every offense and what he did. And, Daniel Jeremiah was on the Mina Kimes show talking about that there was some competitiveness issues with him. I came away watching him and I was just kind of like, this is the guy. Like, I started watching him in November. I was like, this is the guy, huh? Because what does he do great? It's in cuts, out cuts, those type of things. Don't be surprised if there are more than 60 players taken after Jeremiah Love that are not running backs. I think it is Jeremiah Love and a chasm. I can't get on the Jadarian Price round 2 buzz. Round 3, maybe. And don't be surprised if we see just a whole crop of running backs taken on day 3. Mike Washington, I will pub for Emmett Johnson. He's one of my favorites in the class. I think he's severely underrated. A lot of people want to downplay him because of his testing. You look at the productivity in Big Ten, by the way, like, played real teams, was highly productive for 2 years at Nebraska, led the nation in missed tackles force, has the best passing game profile of any back in this class because of what he was asked to do. And oh, by the way, like, the reason why his testing isn't great is because he's one of the very few players at the combine that did everything. He went out there and competed. I'm willing to bet on that profile. I'm telling you that you're going to be picking up Emmett Johnson on your fantasy team because he might not get a starting job right away, but some other guys goes down or whatever, he's going to take over that job and have value. So I will plant my flag on Emmett Johnson. Last one, do not be surprised if 7 tackles are taken in the first round and most of them are taken by pick 25. The tackle drop off is steep. It happens at Ehanicher and Blake Miller, in my opinion. I think Caden Proctor will go earlier than people want him to, which, by the way, I've heard that the Chiefs do like Proctor, which is a choice. It's a choice.
Dude, I've heard that the Browns are interested in Proctor at 6. How wild is that?
With Proctor, it's just like, and here's something like this might be one of my blind spots as a fellow big man. By big, I mean around the waist, not height. I'm not that tall, unfortunately. But when you are that big, your margin for error as a blocker just goes up. How many years have we sat there and said, like, Orlando Brown, his feet suck. He can't get out his kick set. Well, guess what? Orlando Brown's just going to end up being a medium paid starting left tackle for most of his career, or right tackle. Why? Because he has like traits galore, and you're just not going to beat him inside. If he can clean up some of that stuff on the inside, and yes, you can get him around the edge of speed, like that's a starting tackle in the league. And then like, I know that Ehanicher's buzz has gotten more. A lot of teams like Blake Miller, the traits for him, Monroe Freeling. Like I just think that these tackles are going to go fast. And what I am thinking is maybe the Chiefs have this buzz around them for tackle at 9 as a spot to get out and say, hey, come get your tackle. Like the only one that's off the board is Maui Noah, or maybe like there's 2 off the board, jump up to pick 9 and come get your tackle team, and we'll kick back, pick up a few extra picks.
Right. Appreciate you being here, Price. It was fun as always. We're going to be back with Price on Friday night doing the Epic Mock 2026. So that's going to be fun. You guys tune in for that. We're going to let you go. We've had a good one today. Good discussion. Everybody, thanks for watching. Hit that like button on the way out. Hit that sub button. Also, shout out Prize Picks for sponsoring this episode. We'll catch you next time. Go Chiefs.
Wow.